Welcome to our fourth GrandPod. Today we will be discussing a very important topic, that of men working with young children in early years settings. Early years is often viewed as a profession predominantly for women. In comparison, this is not an issue in further education, with a high percentage of men in the teaching and education profession. Those of us working in early years settings recognise the huge value of gender diversity in our sector, but despite this value, statistics show that only 2% of the early years workforce are men. In recent years, there have been many campaigns, nationally and locally, to drive up the profile of men working in early years. So, why does the percentage remain so low? Today, we will be exploring this discussion, and I'm delighted to welcome James and Charlie to our podcast. So, welcome, James. Welcome, Charlie. I'm going to start off just by introducing yourselves, share a little bit about yourselves, which nurseries you work at.
So my name's James. I work at Abington Grove. I'm the nursery manager there. I've worked for GrandirUK for approximately 6 years now. I joined as a room leader and have progressed through. And I've been in my current role for just over 2 years.
Okay, thank you, James. And Charlie?
I'm Charlie. I'm from Daventry, Kiddi Caru. I started last January, so I've been there about a year now. And yeah, I love it.
And you're training with us?
Training, yes, I'm an apprentice. Yeah.
Ah, okay. And you're how long through your apprenticeship?
About a year, yeah.
Okay, and how are you finding it?
Yeah, no, it's good. It's really good.
Lots of work?
Not at the moment, but I'm sure later down the line.
Not at the moment. Brilliant. Excellent. Good. Thank you. What brought you both to the earlier sector, James?
So for me, it was my little boy.
Okay.
So I fell into the sector. So I primarily worked in retail the majority of my career. However, as we know, it's not the most family-friendly hours. And it was always really important for me to be a dad. That was a big thing in my life. And when he'd come along, it was time to make a bit of a change. So I actually went into recruitment for a little while.
Okay.
It was Monday to Friday, so it kind of worked and helped with the family side of things, etc. And I went to go and pick up my little boy one day. I think it was the second time I'd had the joy of being able to get out at that time to do that. And I was playing with him and the children in the baby room. So how old was Harry at the time? He was probably about 8, 9 months old at the time. And the nursery manager was there. And I hadn't met her, so she'd introduced herself to me. And she said, "You're Harry's dad, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, that's right." And we were chatting away and whatnot. And she went, "What do you do?" And I said, "Work in recruitment." She said, "Do you like it?" And I went, "Not particularly. It's not really me. But it means that I can have that time with Harry now, which is the most important thing." And then she said to me, "What would you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to do something a bit more rewarding personally, either working with animals or children, something that just gives you that feeling inside." Primarily, I wanted to work with children, if I'm honest with you. And the response from her was, "Well, why don't you do it?" I then did say to her, "Isn't it a bit strange with men working in childcare?
Okay, so you had that impression.
Yeah, okay. I had that impression.
Okay.
I had that impression firstly, and maybe that was based on stereotypes that I'd known or I'd seen, etc. But the comment from the nursery manager was, "It's not the 80s, James. Like, we'd love to have a male working here."
Okay, so you joined a nursery at 33 as an apprentice?
Yes,
training.
Correct.
Wow,
yeah,
amazing.
33.
Amazing.
Which was a bit scary because, like I said, I'd been retail primarily, and that was 16 to 32. And then I'd had this little 3 or 4 month hiatus, shall we say, in recruitment while I was trying to work out what else am I going to do. It was a real shock to kind of go down that route, but best decision I've ever made. Absolutely.
What age group did you first work with?
When I first started there, I actually worked in the preschool. And I think that is primarily somewhere where males are generally put into initially.
Cool.
And if I'm honest with you, it wasn't my strength. There was no other children in our family. I'd never really been around children that much. But I always loved it when I had those opportunities to do that. And I did feel a little bit out of place in the preschool, if I'm honest. And I spoke to the nursery manager one day and I said, "I need something a little bit more challenging. I don't feel like I'm doing enough." And she spoke about the potential of going into baby room and how important routine and rhythm is, etc., etc. And having just been through that, I'd just had all those experiences. So if you'd asked me initially, baby room, I'd have probably said, yeah, but actually it was the right place for me. But again, there was that feeling in my head where I had to say to the manager, "Is that okay? Because I don't want you to lose any business from me being in there."
Let's explore that again in a little bit, because I think that's a valid point, and I think a lot of our male practitioners that join us feel that. So we'll come back to that. But you joined as an apprentice at 33, having been encouraged into the sector.
Yeah.
Roll on how many years later, and you're now managing one of our settings.
Correct.
So you're demonstrating that not only is there a place for men in childcare, but there is also a career for men in childcare.
Absolutely.
So how did you get from your apprenticeship, because this comes into you in a minute, Charlie, how did you come in from your apprenticeship to now managing a setting?
So I spoke to a colleague who had mentioned Grandir and Kiddi Caru specifically. When I'd initially joined the early years, I was in quite a small setting. There wasn't really any opportunity to grow, and I've always been very ambitious in all the roles that I've been in. So that was the primary reason why I'd come to Grandir, and I'd also heard good things about it as a nursery anyway. And I started as a room leader there, and I did the 2-year-old room. So Harry at that stage was nearly 3. He went into preschool, so we weren't working together, and I did the 2-year, and that was challenging. Really challenging. We had a 28 space 2-year-old room, so from going from a 7 space baby room to a 28 space room was very different. Lots of learning, lots of growth opportunities there. And then when Harry went off to school, it was then time for me to then start asking about next challenges, and I was offered the opportunity to go and support Abington Grove during their Ofsted. And at that point, I was aware there was a deputy vacancy. I had a conversation with the manager, and then it kind of went from there.
So you've been through a number of roles in the nursery. You've gathered your experience, and now you're managing setting. That's awesome.
I think what's also helped is the support that I've received from the company that I work for.
When you were leaving school, did you think early years is for me, or did you fall into it in a different way? How have you ended up in an early years apprenticeship?
So I've been working since the age of 14. So I've always wanted to work. I've worked for McDonald's, Domino's, Indian restaurants and things like that, but nothing's ever felt me or felt important enough to do. So then I was job searching and I come across this, so I applied and didn't think anything of it for like 2-3 days, and then I get a call whilst I was working on a farm, and I got the call and they wanted to give me an interview. So went to the interview. Sandy, that now works at James Nursery, she kept saying to me, we're going to see you very soon. I've definitely got the job, sort of thing. So obviously gave a good impression. That's sort of my story.
And what is it about working with children that you're particularly interested in? What is it that makes you want to work? What do you get out of that?
I think it's the next generation, and I'm there to help shape that. And I think it's just so important and so rewarding at the end of the day.
Have you been around children, like growing up?
I have 4 sisters. So
younger.
Yeah.
Okay, so used to being a sort of role model, and excellent. And when you see James sat next to you, obviously having been an apprentice himself, albeit an older age, and now nursery managing, do you have sort of aspirations? I know you're very young, but are you in this because you're looking to have a career, and meeting people like James shows you can do that?
No, definitely. I'm definitely looking to get a career out of it, and even if I don't, it opens so many doors to so many other places as well. So even if later down the line it's not something that I want to carry on doing, it opens so many doors, whether that's emergency services or NHS, something like that. I've got all them options, and I'll get you through the door.
Okay, so it's a good grounding for either a nursery career or doing something else that you might want to do in your career. Definitely. Do you have any other male practitioners in either of your nurseries, or are you quite lone wolf?
I have another practitioner. He's great as well.
Okay, so there's 2 of you in your setting. How about you, James?
Just one in mine, unfortunately.
Just you?
Yeah, just me.
You flying the flag?
Yeah, hopefully we can get another. It would be really, really nice. Yeah. But yeah, it is nice to see certain nurseries, for example, where Charlie works.
So on that then, what are the barriers? What do you think the barriers are to bringing more people? Because we know we've talked about the 2% of the sector male workforce in our sector in the UK, and we nationally, sector-wide, and at GrandirUK have run various campaigns and are trying to constantly raise the profile of bringing men into childcare. So what do you think are the barriers? What do you face?
Financial can be quite a constraint. I was lucky that we were in a position where my partner earned quite decent money, so I was able to take quite a drop.
It is a drawback for most people, I'd say, and it's, I wouldn't say not advertised to men as much as it should be. Like when it comes to promoting the business, it's always a lady on the front cover and things like that. Okay,
interesting. So from a diversity perspective, you think sector-wide, when you're looking for roles or you're looking at early years information or organisations, you generally see more female representation? So that's a challenge in
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah, I think you do. Yeah.
Okay.
You'll see a lot of the advertising and it is generally females on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So good bit of advice though from you both for organisations to think about advertising, because if we're trying to raise the profile of men in early years and bring more males into the sector, actually start with how you portray your organisation and how you portray the sector. So that's a really good piece of advice. What other barriers, what other prejudices, because you will come up against prejudice, that's a fact.
Yeah,
we've seen it. There have been a couple of recent very disturbing, distressing cases in the news. So how do you tackle those things in being a man in the nursery?
Personal drive, if I'm honest. I think I did find it hard when I was a 30-year-old apprentice. You did feel that isolation a little bit being on your own. You did have a little bit of paranoia about what people might think. As I said, I'd came into the sector with certain prejudices in my head. So you're always thinking, what will happen above it though? It's so important for us to be able to challenge that. We offer very similar opportunities to what females do, as well as what we can offer as well. And we've got to support our staff to be able to not feel that feeling inside and that stigma. And I think it does take quite a strong character to be able to push through. But I wanted the best for my family at the end of the day. And I'd seen it as a career. First year of being an apprentice, although it was tough, I loved it and I really enjoyed going to work. I didn't have that Sunday feeling anymore, and I could see that there were opportunities for a career within it. And why not? Why not challenge those narratives? You saw a dad walking down the street, you'd celebrate, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
if you saw them walking down the street with their children.
Yeah.
So what's the difference within the nursery?
I agree with you, James, and I think that's a really important point to make. Charlie, do you, as an apprentice, do you feel you ever come up against any prejudice, or are you concerned about any of that?
Not as such from parents or other staff members or anything like that, but recently there's been few males on the news in the nursery setting doing awful, horrible things to children. It just makes me sick, and like I know I'm better than that. So if anyone were to say anything, I will back my corner because I know I'm better than.
Does put you on edge a little bit though, doesn't it?
No, definitely. Like, am I going to go in tomorrow and I'm going to get treated differently? Am I going to get called out or?
Yeah, and you should never be treated differently. But it's how do we educate parents, and how do we speak to parents, and how do we ensure that they understand? You know, everybody goes through the same checks, the same DBS process. Everybody is safe to work in our nurseries, and actually when you recruit people into a nursery, whether you're male or female, you only know what you know at the time, and therefore it is about practice, it is about tight safeguarding procedures, it is about observing and supporting and challenging each other, as for females as equally for males. Have you got any examples of any prejudices that you've come up against personally that you've overcome, or have you sort of been quite lucky where you haven't personally experienced any?
I have had some, and actually it's from my friendship group.
Okay.
They were very shocked when I told them going to do. There was quite a lot of silence, looks, and so then I challenged it one day with one of my really close friends and said, What's up? What do you mean? Well, you seem funny about the job that I do. Well, it's a girl's job, isn't it? Why is it a girl's job? Well, it is. You're a nursery nurse. And however, that's not important. Whether I could understand how he may perceive that, I think over time they grew acceptance for it because I spoke so passionately about it and how much I enjoyed the role. And then they could see, obviously, my career's developed and I've moved through, and now it's quite accepted, and it's very much a really good thing, and they love the fact that I do that, and I love telling people that I do this role. It's very interesting to have a conversation out in public. I tend to find now the conversations I'm generally having with people, friends as well as new people, are always really positive, and they're really very much like, that's amazing, you're a male and you do that role. And I feel really proud to be able to say that I am a male nursery manager.
It's interesting because if you were to say I'm a primary school teacher or I'm a secondary school teacher, people wouldn't question what you do. Right. And again, looking at the research, I think 14% of the teaching population in primary school is male and about 35% in secondary school. So still predominantly female, but much higher than in the early years sector. And I think if the sector was professionalised, and rather than being referred to as childcare, was referred to early education, because that is what we are, early education as well as childcare, I wonder whether there would be such a stigma around men in childcare. So that for me is one of the things that I think could help to solve some of the prejudice if it was seen as an educational environment, because it doesn't seem to be such a stigma when there is a male teacher in a school. But it does seem to be a stigma when there is a male practitioner in a nursery.
The age of the children that we look after could potentially have an impact with that as well, because we are looking after children who might not necessarily be able to communicate what's happened that day.
Charlie, what's your favourite age to work with?
2 to 3s.
Okay, why 2s to 3s?
It's the most challenging room I think anybody could ever work in, and I just love the challenge. I love the children that come in there every day, and I love because the 2 to 3s in the preschool, they join up at the end of the day. So even if I really miss the children that have moved down, we go see them anyway.
Which is nice.
Excellent. Excellent. I've got a couple of specific questions that I just wanted to ask you. And I know we've talked about some of these, but James, if we disrupted the gender narrative, as we all know there is one, and we removed all the labels of male and female from early years roles, what behaviours or strengths or qualities do you think might suddenly become more visible, and what stereotypes might disappear?
Sure. Interesting question. I wouldn't want that to happen. I think it's really important that we celebrate similarities that we have as well as the differences that we offer, like we do with our children. It's really important that we celebrate equality as well as what makes us different, and be able to celebrate those things. So I wouldn't want to, if I'm honest with you. We should be in a position where we should be celebrating females just as much as males. And I do think we've now started to come to a certain age where actually sometimes males feel worried about being males and speaking out, and we still should be proud of what we should be able to do, just like we should be for our females.
Do you think there's been a time when being a male in early years or in your nursery has been an advantage?
Yes, I do. I think with me being the only male in the setting, you are recognised quite quickly. Everybody knows your name. You might not know their name, but they know you because you're one of the only males there. So obviously you do stand out. And it's lovely because you do have different relationships with the children, and you do have different relationships with the parents as well. And all the conversations I've had with my parents generally are they're so happy that there's a male there, and that their children come home and talk about the different things they've done with myself and the different things they've done with the females within the nursery as well. So yeah, I think it has its benefits without a shadow of a doubt.
Thank you. No Charlie, as someone training to become an early years practitioner, what are your hopes for the future for men in the early years workforce?
Well, obviously the main one, I'd like to see those numbers rise without a doubt. I sort of like being special at my nursery. I like being one of the only males there, but sometimes it does make you feel a bit alone, but sometimes it just make you feel like, oh, I'm a bit left out. I'm just going to walk away now, sort of thing. So yeah,
that's a really important point. Do you find it easy to integrate into the rest of the team if it is predominantly female? Because I think, joking aside, it's a very valid point. If it's relatively isolating, or it's really important the team around you, whether you're male or female, it's easy to feel isolated as a female in a female environment. But do you manage to integrate well into the rest of the...
In my room, shout out to Michelle. She's lovely. She makes me feel a part of everything. She is just amazing. So when I'm in my room, it's not hard at all. But say it's the staff room or the office, sometimes there can be that barrier in between. But no, most of the time I'm able to join in.
And do you think you're really well accepted in the old workforce?
Definitely, 100%. Angeline's always celebrating like International Men's Day, Apprentice Day, so making me feel recognised and wanted.
Do you think they sometimes could potentially go almost over the top to make sure you feel included? Because you, as James said, sometimes being the only male in the setting has an advantage because you stand out, but does that sometimes drive a different behaviour with people, or do you not mind that anyway?
To be honest, I don't mind, because I like being sort of special, but sometimes it can be a bit much, like, because I can feel sorry for the girls because they're just as amazing and they're sometimes not getting the same recognition.
Yeah. And look, we know the least prejudiced people in our world are our children, and our children do not look at anything from a male, female, cultural. They just want to feel looked after and excited and happy to see you. And as we talk about in our me model, all of those things that the children deserve, it doesn't matter whether that comes from a male or a female. Our prejudices come from usually our adults or societies. So the actual childcare, the actual practice and working with the children is probably the easiest part, isn't it, of being a male in early years. So as we think about wrapping up the podcast, is there anything for anybody that might be listening that is a male who may be exploring a career, or is a male who is already working in nurseries and is experiencing some of the same challenges or prejudices that you guys have experienced and we're trying to eradicate in our workforce? Is there any advice you would share?
Reach out. There's plenty of people who are willing to help and willing to listen. There's plenty of support in the wider world as well. We've held some Teams calls with our males working within not just the nurseries but also the support office, which has helped obviously bring that togetherness which we want throughout the whole company, to kind of discuss some of those challenges there might be, and also how we can support and how we can try and attract more. I was so pleased to see, as someone who set it up, to see so many people willing to get involved, and not just males as well. There was lots of female managers that wanted to join the call.
Right, because you run a men in childcare group at GrandirUK. So how does that work? Like
we've mentioned, we are known quite well. If you're wanting to come into childcare, or if you're currently with a provider where you're not having that support and you haven't got those people around you, come here. We will look after you. There's plenty of people, and there's so many examples of, well, for example, my story where I have progressed. I've been so lucky to have some fantastic leaders who have always supported me and never made me feel like I'm different. It's always been about, if you're good enough, you're the right person for it, and that's how it should be. We don't want to talk about, we don't want this to be an issue. We don't want to have this conversation about males. It shouldn't be a topic. Unfortunately, it is. But the more we talk about it, the more some of us will stand up and shout about it and the importance of why and what a great career we can have. I think it will be a generational thing.
Okay.
And over time, we can keep changing that narrative to that stage where we're not having this conversation.
That would be an achievement, wouldn't it?
Be.
Where it isn't a topic anymore.
Not exactly.
Because it is
and
natural.
We're just talking nursery practitioner or
absolutely.
nursery manager, and there's not it's a male.
Yeah. Thank you, James.
No worries.
Charlie, what advice would you give, being our new future practitioners and leaders of our early years workforce?
If it is really something you want to do and you're on the fence, just do it.
Yeah.
Just fill out the application, wherever it is, in person, online. Don't care what anyone says, just do it.
Give it a go.
Hey?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You find it really rewarding.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and many jobs aren't, are they?
No.
Let's face it. So being able to work in early years, I mean, I've worked in early years for many, many years, and I think it is just the most amazing environment. And I also think it's what we make it. I think it's easy to lose sight of why we do the roles that we do, regardless of your gender or your background. I think, they're our future generation, and we're all important. We all play an important part in their future.
For myself as well, personally, it's so nice to see, for example, like Charlie and Matthew thriving at Daventry, and to see more males. And I hope we've obviously built up a bit of a relationship as part of the men in childcare. And I do,
and it's good to have role models out there. And we were going to have Luke join us today, weren't we? Who was a third in charge at one of our other nurseries, but unfortunately he's been unwell. But again, just showcasing a career path that he's on, so that we can see there are those opportunities out there for our male practitioners. So hopefully this conversation has gone some way in supporting people to think differently or to want to explore a career in early years. And we'll keep banging the drum, and we'll keep campaigning for getting that 2% up to 10% and beyond over the coming years. So thank you so much for coming in and travelling down to chat to us today. Thank you very much. And that's the end of this podcast, and we will look forward to seeing you on the next. Thank you.